Hello, Imaginers. Thank you for tuning in. Please let me know if you can hear me, if you can see me. I will be checking the chat as I do this brief intro. My name is Scott Weidenkivowitz, and I am the community manager here at Imagen. If we haven't met before, it is nice to meet you now. My goal here is to help you get the most out of Imagen so you can spend less time worrying about the tedious post-production and focus more on what you love. Today, I'm chatting with the super awesome Jerry Ghionis about print competitions and probably a bunch of other stuff. Jerry will also be doing some very insightful critiques on photos submitted by you. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And we want you to be able to be involved. So if you are watching live, please comment with the location where you are watching from. There will be more opportunities, of course, to share your thoughts with us and ask questions. But for now, if you could just share where you're tuning in from. And if you are watching the replay, if a friend shared this with you, I'm happy you're here. Sorry you couldn't tune in live. You will know you're watching the replay because it will say I was live instead of I am live. And if you are watching the replay, just leave a comment with the word replay. Yeah, if you're brand new to Imagen, welcome. We're so glad you're here with us. Now, Jerry, hello.
Hey, mate. Fantastic. Great to connect. It's really good to connect with your community, mate. It's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny. We wanted to do this, and we've had to figure out a time that worked. And typically we do these on Wednesdays. We got it on a Monday this week, and it's gonna be a blast. I'm not used to doing these on Mondays, so it's a little bit of a shift for me in my schedule, but it worked out well, and I'm really glad that we're doing this. And I know that there's going to be a lot of great takeaways, a lot of very actionable things that people can do, and some personal things that I think will help me as well, which I'm really excited about. Here's the thing. I know myself extremely well, as I hope others would too. I have never, ever entered a print competition, just in the same way where when my karate instructor asks for those interested in being in a karate competition, I bow out and avoid it. And that's because I do photography, even though I do have clients, even though I do make money from photography, I do it for myself more than anything. And that's why I never made photography my full-time job. That's why I've always wanted to work in the industry, but not make it my full-time thing, because I know myself that well that I know I would wind up hating photography if I focused on it. So that's kind of why I've never entered print competitions, because I do it myself. So with that said, I know there are many benefits of print competitions, including critiques. And today I'm excited to dive into that conversation. Well, because selfishly, because everything I just shared with you, but there's so much more. So with that said, is there anything that you want to say as we kick this off, before we just dive into my notes?
Yeah, man. It's funny because what you said before, you said, you photograph for yourself or you photograph for
Mhm.
your clients. So why even enter photography competitions at all?
Mhm.
And it's funny because if you haven't been exposed to photography competitions, it's this thing that's happened somewhere in some country, in some states, and you're like, okay, that's fine. They don't really mean much. I run a good business. That's totally fine. Now, most of us who work in the industry own our own business. So really we don't have a mentor. We don't have anyone else to learn from. And what happens is sometimes we do the same thing over and over again. Like we're photographing a wedding, we're photographing a portrait, we do pose number 23 with bride number 44, or maternity, expected mother 27, and then it's okay and you make
Yeah.
money. But then what happens is that you end up not feeding your soul. And also you have no measuring stick. There's no one there to push you. There's no one there that will actually make you better. And the fact is that no matter what industry, whatever playing field you're in, no matter what sport you're in, you simply just get better playing with better players. I mean, that is just a fact. And when I say better
Hmm.
players, that if you're exposed to an international community who are constantly committed to their craft and who have a deadline, literally a deadline to enter imagery or albums, whatever the competition calls for, um, that will make you better. It's as simple as that. I mean,
Hmm.
imagine, hitting a tennis ball, against a brick wall and you hit it to yourself and it's fine. Great. But what happens then all of a sudden you actually get exposed to people um, on a court and then you play and now all of a sudden you I guess that's the thing is that I look back at my career and I entered my first competition at the age, I don't know about the age, but I think roughly 1999. I'm not afraid. I'm 50 years old. So it was about 99, 24 years ago. Um, and I didn't really know where I was at. And nor did I care about competition until I entered it.
Hmm.
And then when I entered and I started getting bad scores, good scores, winning scores, placings, and all that kind of stuff, like I said, it really gave me some confidence to know where I was at in the industry. And most competitions, you're really not even judging yourself against others. I think that's the fear that most people have. I'm going to be
Right.
judging everybody else. You are actually judged independently first. And it's a bad
Yeah.
word. Like think of it like you're benchmarked first against
Hmm.
yourself.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to placings and when it comes to winning like a first, second, third, or a grand award, depending on the competition that you're entering, then of course you at one point you are compared to others. What should represent this particular genre within photography in 2023 and so on and so forth. So that's how it works, man. And honestly, that like when I won my first award, it meant the world to me because I'm like, you know what? My peers actually gave me some time and they gave me respect. And then
Yeah.
when you don't get a score that you want or you think you deserve, what happens is you think, oh, the judges are hopeless. They don't know what they're talking about. Well, when you're on America's Got Talent, do you want to get the affirmation from Simon Cowell? Or one of the softer judges. Well, you want to impress the one that has a more sophisticated palate or is harder to please. So you want to fight for that person who's a bit more sophisticated and who understands the game, so to speak. So, I mean, I've got a lot more to share, but I'll let you guide it with your
Sure.
questions and stuff like that. But my suggestion is that the fear of entering, it's almost like why play a game if you may lose? I mean,
Yeah.
that's really what a lot of people are saying. Why even
Yeah.
play if I might lose? I mean, do you learn more when you lose or what we call failure? Or you know, do you learn more when you win? Well, when you win, you get that dopamine hit. Well done, pat in the back. Here's a trophy. Here's a certificate. But you learn more when you don't get that score that you either
Right.
wanted or you think you deserved. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things where if you just and I think it's the way that the awards are structured, where you're not just getting your placement, you're finding out exactly why, right? You're hearing from the photographers who are doing the critiques as well as like why how your photo could have gotten better, better scoring, right, in order to potentially win. Like so you're not just walking away with either I placed or I didn't place. You're walking away with here's where I placed. I could have placed even higher if I did this, or I didn't place at all, but I could have placed if I did this. So I do think that the way that it's structured, because there are definitely competitions where you don't get that that feedback, but I think the way that it's been historically structured and the way that you're structuring it, from here on, um, and we'll get to all that as well. But I think that's like definitely a big benefit. Talking about benefits, where I really want to kick things off is there are two ways to look at the reward you get from competitions. And although I've never entered one myself, I definitely recognize that these rewards exist. There's intrinsic and extrinsic. I can't even say the word right. Extrinsic. So intrinsic is internally, right? It's enjoyable, it's fun, it's satisfying, it's for yourself. This is what, if I was to enter, this is what I would be aiming for. I'd be aiming for, doing it for myself more than doing it for what's extrinsic, which is you're motivated to do it to gain that external reward, whether it's money, recognition, validation from other people, right? So
Sure.
can can you talk about that from your perspective of from your experience over the years and now also managing an awards?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting the way you put it. Intrinsic is what I totally believe in the sense that you are doing it for yourself. You know, the fact is that there are some people who will do it for validation. They will do it for the bragging rights and all that kind of stuff, and that's totally fine and acceptable. Those who have longevity, I find, within an awards program and or even in photography in general, is that you are, and I constantly preach this. If you've ever learnt from me or online or in person, I've been teaching for 23 odd years, that I always talk about the process and not so much the result. Like, people are like, well, if I win an award, I'll be happy when I enter the competition. I'll only be happy when I win the award. I'll only be happy if my print gets an 80 or above, which means a silver and above. And what happens is you rob yourself of the joy. And if you do win an award, your joy only lasts for literally a night. Like, well done, you got an award, fantastic. Here's a trophy. Bragging rights the following day, social media, fantastic. I have always been obsessed with the process of creation. And if I did not have a platform to enter my work, let alone an international platform, then I would have really no motivation to really put myself out there. I will literally, I mean, because our clients are not sophisticated. And when I say not sophisticated, they don't know the difference between a good and a great photograph. They just know how they feel when they look at it.
Yeah.
So the idea is that, you know, if you are putting yourself out there and saying, you know what, like if you're a basketballer and Michael Jordan said, hey, you can work on this. You can work on your dribbling skills. Hey, this is how you defend. This is how you attack. This is how you dunk. All of a sudden, like one of your peers saying that to you and critiquing you in that way, I think is just invaluable. I mean, you'll only get better. And like I said, that, you know, failure is built on success is built on the foundation of failure. And I hate that word failure because, you know, it's often demonized, but really failure are just the steps to success. That's really what it is. So for me, that intrinsic perspective of literally, look, hey, I've got a deadline, I've got a date, and I've got to create something new or get an existing client piece of body or work or whatever it may be, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to put myself up to the task. And you know, for me, I remember, you know, entering WPPI, I think for the first time, 2002, 2003. I got a phone call, and a friend of mine who was there said, Jerry, you just scored a 100 on your album. And I ended up winning like the overall and the grand and stuff. And I'm like, I freaked out. I don't know where I was at in the industry. And it doesn't mean that I was the best in the world. That album on that day ended up getting that score. Fantastic.
Right.
And I ended up winning a couple of back to back. And my favorite competition at the time was the album competition. And I ended up not even placing for that third year. And that was more motivating to me. It was so much more motivating. Wait a second, you didn't see what I was trying to do here. Let me go back to the drawing board and work harder. And it honestly, I mean, look, in the moment it stings. Let's face it. If you get again one of those scores that you don't want or you didn't think you deserved, it stings. It's okay. It all happens to the best of us.
Mm-hmm.
But it's those scores that are, again, lower in the totem pole. You've got to start somewhere. You know, you don't just sort of say, I want to play tennis one day, and then all of a sudden you're in a Grand Slam event of the best 128 players. You've got to play the ATP tournaments. You've got to get seeded. And then sometimes you'll get a wild card entry, and then all of a sudden you'll play with the best of them. And, you know, if you get to play in that tournament and you lose to Djokovic in the first round, it's okay. You played against Djokovic, but really most people are judging their success on their previous. If I even get to the tournament, that's pretty damn cool. If I can at least win a game here and there, that's pretty damn cool. And then you keep on going. So now in terms of the external part of it, what has it done for me over the years to win many competitions? The fact is that I get exposed to so many different entities, companies, people, photographers. I also teach, so that helps me from an educational perspective.
Right.
But even my SEO, let's just ignore that because not everyone's going to be a teacher. The man of link backs, if you know about SEO and websites and stuff like that, the man of link backs that I've got organically by purely someone posting that, hey, I won this award or whatever, and it's gone back to my business, or people walking into my studio seeing a trophy cabinet, or people seeing these really cool accolades against my name, it adds a level of prestige and sophistication that even though that my clients don't know, some clients have no idea who I am. They may have Googled me, find my work, but then once they know me or get to know me, they sort of know, hey, I've done a few cool things in the industry. It adds some credibility and confidence to my clients. So it does help with business. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
But for
Yeah.
me, it's more the creative, like the creative perspective and that deadline for my creativity every single year is for me been invaluable. And anyone who's been involved in competition will tell you the same thing. But there'll always be a cynical person saying, "Oh, look, they don't mean nothing. It's totally a, pat in the back fest and all that kind of stuff." And I'm like, you don't know what it means to you unless you play.
Right.
So I'd say play the game, have some fun.
I think the social proof attribute to this is a pretty big one that probably not a lot of people think about. It's kind of like, you get in a perfect world, you have 100 5-star reviews on Google, you've got 100 5-star reviews on Yelp and wherever else you have listed, and people are Googling photographers, and you come up, and wherever they look, you've got 5 stars, and they come into your studio and they see those awards. It's just like further validation to them, like, oh, I picked the right person. And I think the interesting thing with that idea in mind is that if you enter the competition, you didn't get an award, the same people who would have come into your studio would never know that you didn't win the award. So it doesn't, in that mindset, it doesn't hurt to not place and get an award, right? Because they would never know. but on the
Yeah,
flip side,
ignorance is bliss. It's like you're not
yeah,
going to advertise. I lost. If
exactly.
I didn't win 50 awards that I could have won.
Yeah,
That's the thing. You win two awards in an international competition. You're a multi-award winning international photographer for the rest of your life. So,
yeah.
I mean, I say that tongue in cheek because there's many photographers who will do that and use it, and that's fantastic. Like it's
Mhm.
great. Ultimately, this is the thing, guys. It's not a I mean, some people use it as a vehicle for those things,
Yeah.
and some people may even call it shallow. I just say, you know what? I would not have created so many benchmark images and albums in my career if it wasn't for competition. And because I've
Mm.
taught for 23 years, the ripple effect of the imagery that you produce, you can't really quantify. And I say to people, oh, hey, I'm experienced, I make money, I don't need to enter. Well, don't be selfish. And I say that actually it's not even a metaphor. I'm saying that it's your responsibility to teach the next generation and people
Mm.
to be exposed to your work. And I mean, think of any industry. If there were surgeons that never taught their fellow,
There'd be never.
surgery, or
Yeah, that would be it.
we would die in 100 years.
Yeah.
Like that's it, we're done.
Yeah.
Like we would all
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
dying very quick deaths.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, I do. And many people might say, well, Jerry, you believe in it because it's done well for you. I could give you literally thousands of testimonials of people entering and not getting any good score for for several years, and then all of a sudden they get one silver, like an 80, and then all of a sudden it starts to open up their whole world and expose them to,
Yeah.
wow, like that 80 meant so much to me.
Right.
And the struggle, and I say this all the time, steel is forged by fire. It's you want to teach a man or a woman patience, you don't give them something straight away. If you teach someone strength, you don't give them something weak to do, something easy to do. And I
Yeah.
could keep on going. So yeah, man, it's a fun ride. It's a fun process.
So, can you talk to me a little bit about, from your experience as, I mean, you've been involved before before Icon, you were heavily involved with WPPI's own awards, right? Over the years where you've been on the sort of the administration side of things, can you share? And you're welcome to share if any of your own as well. But some of the things that scare photographers that have come up, over and over and time again of, their fears when you talk to them about here's why I did not submit, or here's what I was thinking when I did submit and I was scared out of my mind, or whatever it might be. And following that, what might you say to those people? I mean, you obviously been talking about this now for the past 10 minutes, but so what are some of those fears, and how would you reply typically to people who have those fears?
Look, yeah, great follow-up question. When someone's entering, or like the potential, even the thought of entering scares people. Like, I'm not good enough. We often will hear that I'm not good
Yeah.
enough to enter. Well, how do you know?
Right.
Like, there are people who will clean their house before the cleaner comes. What? Why? Like, now, I'm not saying be disrespectful to someone who's serving you, and as in cleaning your house, but I'm just saying, like, you feel like you have to sort of measure up a certain way. I don't want to be that house that the cleaner goes, that talks to their partner about when they get home from, oh, that house was disgusting. How dare they leave me a dirty house to clean? At the end of the day, like, that fear will creep in no matter how good you are. You don't, and again, I'll often use that tennis analogy. You'll hear Djokovic and say, I was really nervous before that tennis match, or I was really nervous before this, that, whatever. And I'm saying that many of us will be, what makes us great can be the death of us. What makes us great is we're sensitive artists. We're emotional. We're empathetic. What makes us terrible is we're emotional and empathetic artists. It's the exact same thing. So we don't want to freak out and have someone else tell us that you're not good enough. And that is not what is being said. We're just saying this particular photograph that's been entered in this particular genre may be, like, for example, and I know that we're probably going to qualify a lot of stuff because a lot of people might not be understanding what WPPI means, what icon means, what the history is, but we'll probably discuss that shortly. But when you enter an image in a particular genre, if for WPPI's competition and now the Icon Awards, for something to score an 80 or above, which means it's an awarded image, an 80 and above is a silver and so on, then that means it's above average in most areas. So if you look at your day-to-day bread and butter work, and it's something that a good, solid professional should do in their standard everyday practice, that would score a 75 to 79 according to our definition, as in the definitions that we've laid out for WPPI and now the Icon Awards. So what you have to do is look at those category definitions and then understand where an image will be placed by the judges. And everyone's different too, by the way. So we don't train the judges to be robots and judge everything to the exact point. So what we do is that we lay out a groundwork, but we encourage the judges. We don't even encourage them. They're told very specifically to understand what has come before them in that particular genre, and then those definitions are scored well. So, for example, someone might enter an image that's bread and butter work. It's a good saleable image. It made them a couple of grand from an enlargement and a spread in an album. It wins the heart of the clients, but it didn't win the hearts of the judges. Why? Because it wasn't above average in most areas. I'm not even saying it has to be unique at that point. It has to be a better version of what's been done before. So as far as the fear is concerned, what's the worst that can happen? You don't get a good score, or one that you, again, wanted or didn't think you deserved. That's okay. That means it tells you. So even if the fact that you get a 75 to 79, in our definition, it means good saleable work consistent with professional practice. That is a validation in itself. You're actually at a really good point in your career. You're doing what you should be doing at this point. So that's a validation in itself. 80 and above works well too. But I'd say, what's the worst that can happen? You don't get that great score. Everyone gets bad scores. But the minute you get that silver, and then you contribute points to an accreditation program, that's a slow burn to get to the point where peers have recognized you as an icon master or an icon grandmaster, and it's taken you 15 years to get there, that's what it should be. You shouldn't be able to call yourself a master overnight.
True.
And some competitions do that. Like, you could literally, if you enter enough images, you could call yourself a master from an organization overnight. Now, I don't want to disrespect any other organizations. I just believe what in the way we do it, which is a slow burn to get to that point. You
Right.
know, yeah.
Um, I would assume that, and I could, tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to assume that this is not the type of thing where you really need thick skin, because it's not like you're going to be talked down about, right? Everything is critiqued with goodwill, right? It's everything, the way that you're judged, your photo, your work, your album, the way that it's judged is all with goodwill to help you improve. So am I right to say, like, somebody should go in there more open-minded and not thick skin type of thing, right?
Yeah, look, yes, absolutely. I mean, let's establish a couple things, because what you've said needs to be qualified in many ways. So
Sure.
you'll enter different competitions in parts of the world, and if you have the pleasure of attending the live judging, and that's where a lot of people will tell you that they get the most value of almost
Right.
any university, of any kind of educational platform, because you are learning from so many different photographers with different disciplines, with different experience levels, young and new voices, experienced veterans, and they will look at an image a very different way. Someone will look at it from more of an emotional content perspective, one impact, one post-production, one whatever it may be. And the fact is that, we all, how do I say, we all are, again, let's qualify it. Let's go back a step. So what happens is this: when you, and again, maybe Scott, we should just talk a little bit about WPPI, so we can at least
Sure.
give some foundation to our conversation. So WPPI, as most of you may have heard, is an organization that's been running 40 plus years, and in those 40 plus years, they've had a competition. Now, the competition at its, let's call it quantity peak, would have 8 rooms of judging over 2 days, thousands of prints literally being judged. And that's the competition that I've entered again since 2002, 2003. So 20 odd years that I've been entering. And what happens is that for many, many years, many images would come and go, and you wouldn't hear a critique. The score is 79, next print, because you just have to get through images. What happened was that Melissa and I saw quite a few problems in the competition about 10 or so years ago. And the organizers back then as well just were sort of begging for our help, but non-verbally. So we just said, Melissa and I said, look, we can help you. Let's really do for the community what it did for us. Let's reinvent the categories. Let's reinvent the way things are done. And we demanded that every single image or album at the time get a critique. So in other words, everything is commented on. Back then, you would only comment on every single image for the new entrants, and that's what we call the premiere category. So we re-established categories, we expanded categories. People would also say, it's only a Photoshop competition. I can't compete with this expert Photoshop person. Well, first of all, you can outsource your post-production with your explicit instruction. Also, there are divisions within the competition that celebrate in-camera artistry. So you can literally enter a raw file only, and we will judge the embedded JPEG from your raw file. That's incredible. Then we've got a single capture division. There's 3 divisions at a single capture, which basically means that you can't do composites. You can't add 3 or 4 images and do all these kinds of stuff. And then if you do anything in post-production that's more than corrective, extending a veil by 3 miles, extending a background, mirroring it, well, that's goes a little bit far, but there's also a home for you. In the creative division, you've got composites, and then you can do digital painting. You can do whatever you want to do. So all disciplines are respected and encouraged, because we want to see different forms of art within our industry.
Right.
So then what happened was, and then we had an accreditation program. We reinvented it so that if you get, every single time you score on an entry, Like a silver award is worth 1 point. If you get a silver distinction, 1.5. Gold is 2, 2.5 gold distinction, and 3 being a 100. So those points, your top 4 scoring entries, contribute to your honors of excellence designation, and you get an accreditation. So if you get 5 points, you become associate. Master is 20. 35 is double master. Triple master is 50. Grand master is 65. And WPPI now has about 10 grandmasters. So long story short, WPPI's awards got cancelled, just weren't feasible. Like, to do that many rooms over 2 days and judging, it just became just terrible on the balance sheet. Let's put it that way. No choice of our own. It was made for the organization, or from the organization. So we started the Icon Awards. So iconawards.com, Icon Awards. And we've matched everyone's accreditation. So we're really excited about that, because we created the program anyway. We've created the categories anyway. This was our baby for 10 years, literally. And if you want to feel intimidated by other people's incredible work, have physical prints from all over the world come to your garage. So, like,
great.
it's like I say to myself, Jerry, there's no need to be humble. You're not that great. Yeah. Because the work from this is what I'm getting at. You are exposed to incredible images from all over the world. Mm-hmm. The cultural differences are just incredible. The different perspectives, and sometimes there is a Ferrari, metaphorically, that's entered that has a big dent in it, which means it may not get an award, but it's still amazing. It's just the dent is too much to ignore. So. And hence, basically, the birth of the Icon Awards happened, and literally, there's the deadline to enter is the 20th of October. And where do we succeed? Where WPPI just couldn't make it long-term feasible is that it's a digital competition first. And part of the reason why a lot of people didn't enter as well, let's face it, it would be very expensive. You've got to print and match your work and ship it from other parts of the world. Sometimes prints will cost up to a couple $100 per print.
Right.
So if you want to get prints towards your accreditation, you might be, out $1,000. So what we did was, well, now you enter digitally. It's $30 an entry. If you want a critique, it's $15 more. And you can enter as many as you like, and your top 4 scoring entries go towards your accreditation. So it's been and the cool thing is the top 10 scoring entries of each category will then be invited to enter the Print of the Year Awards. And the cool thing is that, okay, if you're top 10, you got a good chance of becoming first, second, third. And now you can enter the physical print. So it's sort of like, you know what? And all of them will be in a gallery at WPPI on the trade show floor. The cool thing is now all the judging will take place in one room for 2 days, and it'll be broadcast live. So we're very excited about it. And the critiques, the biggest part of this that I'm really excited about is that the critiques that people pay for will end up being public. So, for example, if you pay for a critique, and let's say you scored a 78 and you're a bit embarrassed that, hey, my image is up there for everyone to see, your name will not be attached to it if it doesn't get awarded. But imagine in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, there'll be thousands of images from different genres with a personalized critique from an expert within that genre. I can't think of anything that's more valuable from an educational perspective.
Yeah, I agree. The critiques are the things that, like, I love seeing the most virtually, in person. I mean, having the ability to go into the judging room is always really cool, to just sit there and watch what they say, hear what they say. They get up and they get really close to the print, and they're like, it's just seeing how everybody does their judging is really, really interesting, because that's a learning experience in itself. To just paying attention to someone who is judging and critiquing it's really interesting. So here's a good one. Icon Awards, you start digital. You have the potential opportunity to do a print, right? For those who are more digital and rarely offer prints to clients, or rarely print for themselves, whatever it might be, do you have any advice for those who get to the point where they're, okay, send in your print? Any advice to that person?
Yeah, look, if you're not used to sending, like actually printing your work and mounting it and then preparing it in the way like we or other competitions accept, you can use another production service. Like when I would enter, obviously I'm not going to enter my own awards, right? So when I could enter,
Mhm.
I would often use Rocco Ancora. So Rocco Ancora is an incredible friend of mine. His company name is Capture to Print, and he understands like the competition viewing system. He understands how to, really interpret what you say into that language, so to speak, and then you can go for it accordingly. Or quite
Yeah.
simply, you could get an Epson printer. You can get some papers out there. You can go into the community on Facebook as well, and you can ask some questions, and people will always answer you. Hey, this is what you do. Make sure you get a calibrated screen. Understand that your print will be viewed under these conditions. So make sure that you probably print it darker than what you think. Mount it a certain way, and there you go. But like I said, for someone like me, I'm like, I do what I can in camera. My post production is quite limited, and my instructions very explicit. I get it done, mounted, printed, done. It's off, and we're
Yeah.
ready to go. So, yeah, like I said, Rocco and Core from Capture to Print, spelt normally. I think it's .com.au or .com. He's fantastic, and there's many services out there that will
Yeah.
offer the same luxury, but he's the one that I've personally used.
Yeah, I am
Yeah,
sure there's many of the labs that most photographers in the industry are already familiar with. If you were to say, I'm going to be entering a print competition for Icon, which was, came about from the WPPI awards, and you said like, I don't have experience with prints, especially for the competition. Can you help me? I'm sure they would do what they are probably used to doing it already, so they
yeah.
probably know the right way to go about it. So just getting in touch with the lab that you might already have used in the past or um, want to use, I'm sure they are already aware. That's
Yeah, I will get.
so.
I strongly encourage you to get someone who's experienced in that competition
Yeah.
service, because there's a print for a wall and for the client, and there's prints for competition. It's a
Hmm.
very different beast. But the paper choice, the size of the print, how you mat it. There's many things that you need to look at. The good thing is that digital in our competition is first, but then there'll be a whole other educational process that we will do on our platforms
Hmm.
that will help people understand how to get to that point. And the cool thing is that obviously you'll have to get an 80 or an above to be in for the chance of becoming a top 10 within a category or genre. So, and if you've paid for a critique, you may get a good score that gets you top 10, but then you might get a critique that will improve that image even more once it gets to the finals.
Yeah.
Um, that's the cool thing too. So that whole process actually works out really, really well.
Before we move on to the next thing, matte or glossy for
Oh,
the print?
glossy, hell no. Hell no. No, glossy just look, glossy will very rarely get awarded well. And is it a bit of a cliche within competition entries? Somewhat, but glossy just makes things look cheaper.
Hmm.
The color rendering is just almost too rich. You also see reflections of the lights behind you and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff.
Yeah.
And again, for those of you who've never entered, inkjet is almost exclusively the standard way of printing a competition print, because detail in blacks, detail in highlights, the texture of the paper matching the sensibility of what you're trying to say. Is it neutral colors? Is it meant to be soft and ethereal? Is it meant to be high impact? Is
Yeah.
it meant to be dense? Like there's so many things to look at. My suggestion is don't overthink that part of it, at least at this point. And people ask me, well, what do I enter? That's another question I get asked all the time. I've never done it before. What do I enter? Well, two things. Enter what you want to learn from. So you may go fully there expecting that this may not win an award, but at least I'll know where this is at in the industry as an
Hmm.
industry standard in a respected organization that's been out there for a long time, and or your best work. Doesn't mean that if you don't get an 80 or an above that you're terrible. It just means that you might get a 75 to 79. You are doing what you should be doing at this stage in your career. Well
Yeah.
done. This is call it a momentum award. You've got momentum. You're doing well.
Mhm.
But it's a benchmark. That's what and like I said, the images that are, your level of sophistication grows because now you've got something to work towards. I'm not
Yeah.
just Djokovic that's never played a tournament and I'm the best kept secret in the world.
Yeah.
Now I'm playing. And I often use tennis as an analogy because you've got the big three, Nadal, you've got Federer and Djokovic. They've made each other better. Without each other, they wouldn't be better.
Right.
And now you've got this new generation coming up, and I often see it the same way that where would the world be without leaders in the industry or without, and this is the thing too, you don't have to be a Djokovic to win the tournament. That's the difference here with this analogy where it doesn't work. You could literally just get the 1 in a million photograph or that shot, that photojournalistic shot where you see the reflection of the groom in the bride's tears, in a macro shot, and all of a sudden, so you can win the tournament
Yeah.
with an image that may be not exactly representative of your day-to-day work. It's
Right.
just you just scored that killer shot. It's the perfect storm of that subject with that background, with that light and that harmony, that cropping composition, and then that impact, and
Yeah.
then boom, you're right there. And so it's exciting.
I'm glad you got to it because my next question was going to be, what do you enter? So I'm glad that you you got to it. Now, Imagine has a long history of supporting education, promoting excellence in our industry, and so we are proud to support Icon Awards, and so we're sponsoring the couple together in the wedding day category at the Icon Awards. So that we're really looking forward to that, and we're really looking forward to seeing all the awesome entries to come in. And I'm just being at WPPI and getting to see all, the prints, and hopefully I'll be able to pop into the judging room one of those days, and it'll be really nice to see.
And
Always
thank you for your
a lot of
support. Thank
fun.
you for your support, by the way. We really appreciate your
Yeah,
support. So thank you.
definitely. Yeah. So let's dive into the critiques. We got a handful of submissions to critique. You ready for it?
I'm ready, mate. I'm ready.
All right, here we
I,
go.
I'm
So the first
I'm gonna
one.
put my glasses on and look at my lower computer. So I've got a monitor in front of me underneath the camera, but I'm gonna look at close. So I'm
Yep.
50. I need glasses, man.
So I noticed Braulio was in the chat earlier. So Braulio, if you have any questions while Jerry is critiquing your photo, feel free to just throw that in the comments in the chat, and hopefully we'll catch it and be able to answer you.
So what I'm going to
Yeah,
do
it's
is
all
I'm going
yours.
to critique this. I'm going to critique this as an image independent of awards. If if there's a question on hey, what would I believe this would get? I'm going to leave Brillia to ask me that if he wants that or not, because again, the critiques will sometimes be slightly different. But let's look at this independently. And if this was presented to me and I was mentoring someone, how would I critique this? So first of all, it has impact. There's no doubt about it. We have obviously the bride occupying quite a large part of the photograph, which I think is fantastic. The impact is nice because we've got the sun's going down. We've added some off-camera lighting. I'm assuming with that kind of sunlight at the back, it would probably be an off-camera flash. I think it's been done well. Here's the thing. So what I like about it, there's quite a few things. The way that the veil is giving us a bit of a love heart on an angle on the side, I think that's really clever. The fact that we have a triangular composition, so obviously a woman with a dress is always going to have a triangle because that's just the nature of the dress, and triangles are very pleasing to the eye. The cool thing about this is that we've got that foliage, that little tree on the bottom right, and then we've got the lamp, and that forms a beautiful triangle. And triangles, again, are harmonious in photography. With this shot, the cool thing about it is that our eyes read usually in most English-speaking language countries from top left to bottom right. So our eyes go right into the veil, and then they pretty much stay into the bride. Now, there's a couple of things. The bride is standing quite flat-footed. And you might say, what is a problem with that? Well, we're not really celebrating her curves and her shape, and there's no energy shifting one way or the other. So traditionally, I would like to see a bride shifting her body weight either towards the camera or away from the camera. Traditionally, most women will look better I'm not saying she looks bad here. She's a beautiful girl, gorgeous curves, all that kind of stuff. But if we push her weight on her back leg and bend the front knee, now we create movement, which means that we create energy. Also, her left hand, do you see how there's a little hint of gap between her arm and her body, but it's not apparent, it's not major. What happens is her waist continues to the width of her arm. So now she's just looking a little bit wider than she is. The saving grace is that little piece of black between her elbow and her waist. But traditionally with a woman and a woman's figure, especially with a bride, if you can bend the body part, bend the body part. So now that arm is being straight, the flowers are being held, and what's happening is that straight arm is ruining the curves that she's already got. So if you can bend her elbow, slide the elbow back, bend the wrist up a little bit. Now let's look at her right hand. Her right hand is obviously holding the veil, but she's showing us the other side of her hand and her wrist. Traditionally, you don't want to see this, or you don't want to see this. You want to see here or here, and you want to see it bent. Okay, like this. And also, when the hand is above the waist, traditionally the hand could be better flopping down, and it can go up. But the common denominator is once the hand goes above the waist, put it down. Once it goes below the waist, put it up. So think of like, up and down, like with a Karate Kid. Also, what's been popularized in the last several years, 5 years, 8 years, is every bride with a veil, it's windy. And what's happening is it's becoming a cliche. So I'm looking at all the foliage of the trees. The trees seem very still, very serene, very static. And then all of a sudden we have this gush of wind that just happened to blow the dress. Now, obviously, I'm assuming that there was an assistant there. They threw it up. They ran out of the shot and took the image. So what's happening here with this shot is it is a photograph that is consistent with standard professional practice. It is a solid image done really well, beautiful for the album, beautiful for the wall. And I probably answered my own question. I believe this would not get an 80 or an above because of those reasons that I've brought attention to. And then also, I'm looking at this too. If you look at the veil, it's very dramatic. If you look at her face, it's not dramatic at all. So her face and her body language doesn't match the movement and the energy of the dress. So those little things, when you add them all together, they make up for a summation of what a judge would look at and say, hey, then this score would be this, or this score would be that. So now let's say, Brilio, and I know you're watching because Scott basically mentioned it. Let's say if I said this, okay, so I'm telling you blatantly that I don't believe this would get an 80 and above. But Jerry, it got an enlargement. I made $2,000 from this, whatever. And I'm saying that's fine. This is a different arena. You're working with people who have a more sophisticated palate than your clients. So what happens is, if you paid for this and you didn't get awarded, but you paid for a critique, would that critique that I've just given you, the question to you is, let's put it pragmatically, was that worth $45?
I'm going to say $30. Yes. Let's see what he says.
Yeah, so I would ask for his feedback on that critique, and he can be brutally honest. He can say I was an absolute asshole. He can say that. But also those people who are watching, I don't know how many people are watching. Most people probably will watch this after it's made live. But the question is, was that valuable? That's the question. Right. And would you learn more? If I found nothing that could have been worked on, and I said, that's great, it's fantastic, 86. So it's a
I'm sorry, I'm just reading
That's awesome.
Comment. He's so funny.
I love it. Yeah.
I don't know if you see his comments, but he did say, I never shoot without off-camera flash. So I've learned that from Braulio over the past year and change that I got to know him. And by the way, if you've never looked at Braulio's work, Jerry, please do. If I was 13 again and could tell my parents to
what's his website? Send me a link.
Yeah, I'll send it to you after. I'll send it to you after. But if I was 13 again and I could tell my parents this is who I want to photograph my bar mitzvah, it would be Braulio, 100%.
Amazing.
So
Amazing.
yeah,
So, but by the way,
yeah,
Broly, just real quick. So your off-camera flash combination of ambient exposure and your off-camera flash actually, as I mentioned, it's the first thing I said. That's really, really good. It gave me impact. And that's the thing that what we encourage, let alone demand from our judges, is that when you're critiquing, you're not just saying, well, this is bad, 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 bad. Tell me what was good about it and why. Tell me
yep.
what are the encouraging words, and then mostly give me something that I can work on. Now, this is the thing, Brilio. Let's say you did all the things that I mentioned in camera, and it was already done. Then you might have a chance of getting an 80 to an 84, an 85 to 89. The definition. Let me just sort of read it out to you here. Even though I wrote them down myself, but let me be very specific. 85 to 89 is the word is excellent, exhibiting outstanding skills in all areas and originality. Oh, sorry, pardon me. Silver distinction. Excellent use of imagination, skill, and technique. So we're not even saying it's unique yet. It's imaginative, the way either in concept, execution, or technique. And it's an excellent use of it. When you get to the 90 range, the global word for that range of gold is outstanding. It stands out above the rest. And it says exhibiting outstanding skills in all areas and originality. Now it has to be original. And that's where those verbiages come into mind when you're choosing your images for the awards. You could almost judge yourself. You'll roughly know where it is. So great shot of this particular genre, but those several things that we looked at, certainly, like I said, that they can make a massive difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can I submit bar mitzvah images in the competition? Absolutely. So bar mitzvah would probably be in, let's say, for example, a quinceañera or something like that. You would put it in children, teenager. So what you're doing is you're judging, similar subject matter. You won't be judged against a 50-year-old woman with incredible lines on her face and a different story to tell when you're 15 or 16 or 12 or 13, whatever the age is. So just know that happens too. Those categories are very, very different. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Braulio, for sending that in and for hanging out and listening to Jerry's critique. Let's go on to the next one from Karsten. He didn't send a last name, so I don't know what his last name is, but here's Karsten's photo. No
worries. And I know that this is behind a Facebook wall and it's quite private. Just for the benefit, if you're doing this again in a public manner, we do it anonymously with no names attached to it, because if there was an image that was, let's say, had really great award potential, and then there was a name associated with it, then it would sort of ruin the impact. Certainly, we're here just for learning. I'm just giving you a global comment. So for those who are watching, I know we have only for the rest of the week to enter the Icon Awards, but if once you get wrapped up in this ecosystem, so to speak, if you have something that has award potential, which I'm sure there is, put a folder on your desktop and call it Icon Awards Potential. And then every single shoot that you do, grab those 3 or 4 images, pop them in, don't think about it. When we announce the entries, go through them, narrow them down, and don't post any potential award images to social media if you want the impact to be greater when the judges have seen it. No one's going to judge you down for an image that's done exceptionally well and they've seen before, but the impact of seeing it for the very first time, it's indelible. It's unquestionably, will assist that judge. I've never seen this before, blah, blah, blah. Or someone else may have copied an original concept, and then all of a sudden you've lessened your impact. So, okay, let's look at this image. So I like the perspective. I love the shallow depth of field, the way that it's sort of just drifting off the pews there and right up to the groom. I like the way that we've used the flowers in the background to frame the groom. I want to say this in a delicate way and this is with utmost respect, I'm just giving you my first impression. My first impression, it looks like she's doing something naughty to the groom, and you once you see it, you can't unsee it. Now, it looks as though that maybe, and again, it could be contextual, it could be a cultural thing, it could be like the bride is honoring the groom and the groom is holding her face. From this angle, though, it does look like a certain act that will totally put off the judges. Does that make sense? So this image may have been incredible, literally perpendicular to this. So if you went literally just 90 degrees to the right or left, and then you photographed it, and there was a delicate, soft gesture with the groom on her face, fantastic. But again, it's just the first impression. Yeah, that I would just be careful of that. Again, we could get a great shot. It just means it was shot from a different angle. Yeah.
Yeah. And once you said it, I can't unsee it either. So I totally, I totally understand that.
Yeah, and this is a good lesson to learn, is that
Hmm.
you're looking at it, so judges will see it with a different lens. It's anyone will. See, if you are insular and you are your own boss and you don't share your work with anyone other than your clients, all right, you may do it on social media, but I mean, social media, you'll get people who just trying to rip you down because they want to make themselves feel better.
Hmm.
When you're doing it in a competition, especially with us, we have literally, I mean, we've breathed fire to the judges behind closed doors on how much we encourage respect, integrity, and the delicacy of the words chosen when critiquing imagery. Um, Anything that be misconstrued as disrespect for the image, the entrant, the genre, the industry in general will just not be tolerated. I mean,
Right.
no one's perfect. We're all going to make mistakes, but what I'm getting at is that this might be a signature shot that one does on a wedding for this particular photographer.
Right.
Now that I've seen it with different eyes, and you didn't, that you didn't may have seen that, you may just rethink your perspective. And again, it's a learning process. Okay, you didn't get a silver or above, but man, you know what? I've got to learn to look at my imagery in a different way. Not saying, well, Jerry's just got a dirty mind, that's why he saw that. I'm like, well, no, like that's just a different perspective. And judges, or let's not call them judges, your peers and experienced professionals in the same industry have literally just seen something different and just exposed you to it. And again, so imagine this. I've only critiqued 2 images. Imagine now we'll get to the 6 in
Hmm.
completion, but imagine if you were exposed to hundreds like this. Then you might be one of those lurkers and just say, great, I'll just absorb. And well, no, it's important that you share your perspective. You measure yourself against yourself,
Yeah.
and then you also share, and you share the love. The fact is that we all
Yeah.
need to share so that we all get better, you know?
Yeah. Just from me personally, so I do a lot of proposal photography.
Hmm.
And when I'm talking with the spouse who is going to do the proposing to the other spouse, um, I specifically tell them, and it's only happened once where it was unavoidable. But I always say, like, if you see me, make sure it's not your back or the other person's back towards me, because
Great
like that
advice.
is
Yeah.
the worst shot for a proposal. Is like I don't want to see, you know, you down on the knee and I'm looking at your back, right?
You need
It's
to see, basically, you need to see air between them.
yeah,
If you see air between them, then you got context, you know?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's go to the next one.
And just
All
real
right.
quick here, Scott, as well, just real
Yeah.
quick, is that clients won't, like, for example, that previous image that we saw, the very
Mhm.
first one, clients will not notice those differences, but they'll know how they feel when they look at it.
Yeah.
So if there's 4 or 5 little things that the client will not pick up on, but if you literally did that first on a wedding day, on a portrait shoot, you did this, then you did a second shot, and then 4 or 5 things were done differently. She's like, wow, wow, yeah. I mean, I like this better. I don't know why. Well, it could be that the couple are kissing, for example, but the first shot you did, you couldn't see the kiss because one head was covering the other.
Hmm.
Then the weight of, if we're talking about a hetero couple, the weight of the brides was on the front leg. It made her look thicker and boxier and square on the front. She's holding her flowers, which means that my faces are in love, but my hand is not. He's got his hand in his pocket, which means that he's kissing her, but the hand is in his pocket, which means I don't really love you. The hand is saying I don't love you. Then the crop is awkward, which means that there's tension and no harmony. A bride would never tell you those 4 or 5 things, but you just say,
Right.
I like that better because I feel like it's just more emotional. It's more emotive. Again, like it's crazy. So, all right, let's go to the next one. Pardon me.
Okay.
I get caught up with all this stuff. So
No, it's all good. It's all good.
Okay. I love the way the photographer's actually framed this couple. I think that's really, really beautiful. In the environment, the Christmas lights in the foreground work really, really well. And it's gorgeous. Now, from a day-to-day, like looking in the album and everything. Now, this is just my personal experience. Whenever you get a couple kissing, this is a great learning thing for all of us here. Do you see how they're kissing? The bride on the right is looking sort of into the lips. She's more caught up. The bride on the left is looking sort of in the eyes. Let me zoom up to it and see if I can see that a bit clearer. It feels like the bride on the left, camera left, is sort of looking into the eyes. And what happens is when you kiss someone, when you're that close or like 6 inches away or so, when a kiss is imminent and you're totally into it, you'd normally look at the lips. And also there's harmony in that repetition of them looking at each other's lips. So my advice here is if I was with you on that day and holding your lights and you showed me this, I'd say, hey, it looks all good, but get both brides to look at each other in the lips. Also, the problem with, and once I bring attention to what I'm about to show you, you'll never unsee it. When the noses overlap, when the noses overlap with this kind of shot, as in the tips of the noses, and the skin is blended, they're just joined. Like you don't see where one nose stops and starts.
Right.
This reminds me to tell you that when you're doing a silhouette, where I got it wrong the first part of my career, in my humble opinion, the common denominator is a silhouette, never get their noses touching and never get them kissing. Because now we see no luxury of the eyes, the eyelashes, the eyelids, the luxury of the nose, the lips, and the neck. At the most, I'll do a silhouette of the couple touching their foreheads.
Right.
Now, traditionally, when I'm photographing a heterosexual couple, I prefer a kiss done over the shoulder of the guy. And then the girl the woman, lady, however you want to address her, she would tilt her head and her nose on the outside of the kiss. My personal belief is that I believe that in a heterosexual couple, I believe that the kiss is a softer, sweeter, more feminine sensibility. Therefore, I would get her nose on the outside. So in other words, when you do a kissing shot, it's nice that if you do it straight on, sometimes you don't see it perfect or it's too flat, as we're sort of seeing with this kiss. A passionate kiss is when both faces tilt. And I'm not saying with this particular photograph because they both got let's call it a pleasingly aesthetic nose. But if you've got someone with a pronounced nose or a crooked nose, have that nose behind the nicer one. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, makes sense.
Now with this one, let me just zoom it back out again. I like the fact there's 2 things happening here. Having air between their bodies. In other words, we've got a little bit of room for Jesus here, right? We see their shape, but we don't also feel their intimacy because of it. So one argument would be press the bodies closer together because if you were kissing, your bodies would be touching. You wouldn't be leaning forward. So I would sacrifice the silhouette of them, as in seeing their bust and their waist and their hips. I would sacrifice that silhouette per se for them connecting because it's raw, it's sexy, it's emotional. Does that make sense?
Yeah, really interesting.
The fact that we've got a bit of negative space, I think, is nice. Otherwise, it'd be too predictably centered. I think that's really cool. Shots like this are difficult because you'll often hear judges say, hey, we want detail in the highlights. Well, the highlights are the lights. They'll be out of focus no matter, there's no detail in there no matter what you do. When there's so many of them, they detract your attention away from the moment. So this is the kind of shot that would be polarizingly difficult to score well because of that many repeating kind of lights and attention
Yeah.
away from on the couple. But again, it was that critique worth it, because now the next time you photograph a couple, hey, what did Jerry say? He said, hey, the common denominator is photograph over the shoulder, maybe of the groom, if it's a hetero couple. Have her on the outside, lean towards the camera if you're shorter. So now we engage the photographer, shift the hip away from the camera. So we're actually bending forward. We're engaging that moment, and have the hands mirror what the face is saying, and use lights in your shot. But if you're going to do it for competition, maybe think of another way or a different location that might serve you better. You know?
Well done. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's go to the next one.
All right.
I love the colors in this one.
Yeah, the colors are great. Obviously, it's South Asian, it looks like here. It's a cultural thing. Is it photojournalistic? Is it at a wedding? I'm trying to work it out here. I don't know if it's at a wedding. It just might be a cultural moment at an event of some description. So first of all, it has impact. The warm palette obviously works really well. You go closer and you're sort of totally wrapped up in it. The two people in the foreground frame the image. Then your eye sort of bounces around, certainly ends up going to the candles, but then you sort of have a look at all the faces. I like the the faces sort of being in different intensity. I guess the two people that are sort of ruining this shot a little bit. You've got the woman, so they've got the gentleman with the beanie, and part of me, again, if it's a cultural thing, and I'm totally crucifying what that is or means, but let's just call it a beanie for the sake of the conversation. He's mysterious, but he's also disengaged. He's not really looking at what's happening. It's not mysterious enough to me to be compelled to know what he's looking at. Then you've got the gesture of the face of the woman to camera right of him, sort of pursing her lips. Does that make sense? So I'm looking at all of these shots, and I'm not really getting a harmony of that repetition of faces that leads me to be emotionally connected to this moment. Because they're all looking at it, all looks indifferent now. And if you look at the two people in the foreground, the woman on the front left and the right, the blessing and the curses, they frame the shot, but then you look at them and it's a very unflattering perspective because you're using a very wide angle lens. In fact, this is I've got the metadata here. It's 15 mil. So anyone on the corner of a frame of a 15 mil lens is always going to look wide and warped. So this is a shot that would be, everyone who was at this event would probably have taken this shot with that lens. So first of all, I'm not saying this is a bad shot, but everyone covering this event would probably have taken this kind of shot.
Yeah.
The question is, yeah, please go on.
For all we know, that might have been the only option too. Like, we don't know what's behind the photographer, right? So
that's right. So this is the thing. So if you entered this and then you got a score of 74, basically saying requires improvement in technique, it's below standard. It doesn't mean that you as a photographer are below standard and you require improvement in technique. It means this shot it's just not conducive. Your circumstance was not conducive of creating something better, because a judge or a photographer would look at this and say, hey, under the circumstances and under the chaos of what was happening and the degree of difficulty and the fact that you didn't use any supplementary lighting, this is pretty damn good. If we do award this as above average, then we're saying that similar images should pretty much be in the same scoring range. So that's not a good message to send to fellow entrants either. Now, not that every score is predictably the same. I'm just saying that sometimes circumstantially it would be impossible to do better. And as you get more in tune with the kinds of images that get rewarded well, then you start filtering those out. Now, if you don't have images that you think would score well, should that preclude you from entering? No. Enter the images you either want to learn from or you want to understand what your benchmark is within your genre. They're the two reasons above and beyond the fact that you want to enter because you want to get awarded is what I'm saying.
Awesome. All right.
Cool.
Two more. Let me bring up a couple more.
Okay. I really, really enjoy this color palette. I think it's gorgeous. It really suits the subject matter. I love the way these guys are framed. I love the backlight, the fact that it's sort of filtering the wings, the fairy wings in the background there as well. I'm looking at this, and I would place this in a good saleable work consistent with standard professional practices. Why I'm not, in my brain, I wouldn't go to that next level is because you've got these such cute little darlings here in the foreground, but I'm not really seeing a meaningful interaction. Could they be more playful, more mischievous? Could there be some action? Could they be walking? Could there be some gesture where they're holding each other or something? Again, your elements in this image are exquisite. The bokeh in the background, the shallow depth of field. There's so much going for it. We're just missing a gesture. And it's interesting to look at the legs of the girl on the right. So now where her feet are being enveloped by the leaves. So we're chopping her feet, which again could be circumstantial, or it could just be, hey, just stand up, scatter the leaves around and let me see your feet. Or it could be one little heel kick up or something like that. But we can see both her legs. The girl on the left, camera left, both her legs are pretty much right. One's behind the other. So now there's an anomaly there. Whether you identify whether she looks amputated in one leg or you've got the girl on the right to compare to, but if nothing else, she looks too static. At least the girl on the right, there's something going on there as you see that gap, that little triangular piece of gap between her legs. That's at least a little bit of movement compared to the girl on the left. So again, I feel like I want movement. I want a bit more energy, something cute, playful, mischievous, something. But yeah, exquisite work for the clients and beautiful for saleable work. But the judges will be looking for that little bit extra, that extra something. Remember, the first thing that judges will see is impact. Does it have impact or not? The color palette, yes, straight away. Then they start looking for emotive impact, emotional content, above and beyond technique and cropping, composition, posing, lighting, all that stuff. So, yeah.
Awesome. Last one. And I believe she's also in the chat, or she was earlier. So we'll see.
All right. Very cool. Okay. I like the guts that you've got to do this in a sense that this is not typical, right? So with the degree of difficulty, one, to engage our client, to build up enough trust to place her fully clothed in that water and also being pretty damn cold. The way you've got her to lean her body in, I think, is very clever. Resting on her elbow. And because she's resting her body weight on her elbow and her butt, you're sort of hiding that shoulder that would pop out a little bit by the hair. I think that's very clever. The parting of the lips is very sensual. It's whenever you do that, lips look fuller and firmer. And there's a moment either of ecstasy, whatever it may be. She's really feeling that moment. So whether this is some kind of boudoir or elevated boudoir, or even that sensual sort of feeling, I think that you've nailed it really well. That front knee being up is really important. A lot of people, where they get this kind of photograph wrong, is that when you bring that left knee down, that material on her dress flattens out on her crotch and on her legs, and it can be a problem. So this is clever. I'm looking at this. I feel like I want something a little bit more. Does that make sense? Like, I'm looking at her left hand. You see how we can see her wrist? Like, it's about there. I would bring that down so we see that framing her face even better. And the nature of the dress, it's sort of her face blends in a little bit. To have a little pocket of air or something would be nice, or bring that arm down. So see how it's like this? If you brought it a bit further down, then we have a little bit more breathing space. I also believe that this image would benefit from a shallower depth of field. I'm looking at the metadata. It's F5. Like if we shot this, let's say, for example, 1.2, 1.4, 1.8, the shallowest lens of that particular kind of focal length that you've got, and then possibly even got her to hold it for half a second, quarter of a second, 16th. So now we get the blur of the water. It's those kinds of things that sort of just elevate this image that's already very impactful to just be even stronger. So I think the degree of difficulty and everything, I think is quite high. I feel like this is probably in that 75 to 79 range, somewhere around about there for the good things that I've mentioned about this photograph. But again, those two things, and again, and please don't be discouraged by that. Be encouraged. This is, in this genre, I believe it's what you should be doing. But those extra little things could make all the difference. And you might say, Jerry, well, the water was going forward and back, and she would have blurred. I'm like, well, get her static, and then that's funny. Jerry. Thank you for that. I'm saying those extra things add those extra elements that made me stop and stare at this for longer. But the pose and the gesture are really good. Those extra little things, I think, could elevate this quite dramatically. So, Tasha, if I would like to challenge you to redo this shot with those extra elements, and any website that you see of ours, emails goes to Melissa. So whether it's a week, a month, and a year, whenever you redo this, send me the shot. I'm going to hold you accountable, and I want to see it. Now, what would this go into? Yeah, sorry.
Yep, that's okay.
Yeah, I would probably put this in fashion. Boudoir, it's not quite boudoir. Boudoir, it's sort of implied nude or consistent with that thing. If you put this in portrait individual, a portrait is more about who someone is rather than what they look like. This is more of a sensual perspective, and the clothing is a big part of it. And now you might say, well, I'm showing what she's very sensual. And I'm like, well, I think this has got a better chance in fashion than it would be portrait individual, because then not only do you first compete with yourself, then if you do get awarded well, then you're competing with other people who have more story in the image that's hard to compete with. Does that make sense? So think of it strategically. I like the fact that you asked that question, but I probably would put this in fashion. And just so you know, like, we define those categories very specifically. So, for example, if it was fashion, I'll put this here: images where the focus is on the face and or clothes and or hair and or makeup and or accessories. This category is more about the aesthetic than who people are. So the cool thing about it is, too, guys, is that when you are entering the competition, we asked you 4 questions, and it guides you as to which one to enter. So it's almost like a wizard, rather than like, oh my God, how do I enter? What do I do? Just answer questions, and then it'll come up. And if you feel like it could go into 2 ways, you just sort of go back one, and then you place it where it, in another spot. So, but awesome. Yes.
This has been so good. I love listening to you critique photos. I could listen to you critique photos all day long.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I didn't want to share any of my work. I wanted the community to share what they wanted to share. So I'm glad that they felt comfortable doing that. And as we're seeing, for those who were here, Tasha Brolio, thank you for being brave enough to do that, and for listening to Jerry and hearing what he has to say. Tasha says, I thought it was going to be way worse. Jerry, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about competitions, talk about prints, talk about fear, for doing these critiques. Thank you for taking the time to spend with me and to go through all that.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and I just want to thank the photographers thank you for your trust. Because here's the thing: let's say you entered these, and I probably personally would have placed pretty much all or most of them in that range. So let's say they didn't get awarded, but you did pay for critique, and it was done with delicacy and trust. And I'm not saying I personally will critique everything. Certainly, we're going to pick experts in different fields and people that we trust that also give a sensitive but very truthful, but also constructive advice. This is the worst that could happen. you didn't get awarded, but you learnt a lot. And
Mhm.
now it's encouraging that next time I put my images up there, I might have just implemented these things and it makes you better.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what my encouragement to you is. So for those of you who are watching and listening, if you're inspired to maybe enter, the Icon Awards, the deadline is 11:59 on the 20th of October. So depending on what that on that's it's currently on the website, on the Icon Awards on the website, but I think that the actual hours are wrong because we've got 4.5 days to enter, but it says 3 hours and 3 days and 19 hours. I think we've got the time zone wrong, but like, just think of it this way. I think it's like West Coast time, USA,
Mhm.
11:59 on Friday night.
20th.
So you enter digitally first. You have to enter digitally. Your top 4 scoring entries go towards your accreditation. If you get top 10, you'll be invited to enter the Print of the Year Awards. By the way, if you get an 80 and above, you will be published in a book. You will be in a book forever. And that's pretty cool. And also, imagine you actually sponsoring a category. Your name will also be
Right.
next to that category for forever as well. So
Right.
we're very excited about that. But just jump in, guys. Have some fun. And I'll be honest with you guys. This is not an opportunistic money grab. For those people who know us, this is not this is really a community service that we're doing. We could
Right.
make a lot more money photographing more gigs, doing more stuff that we do, but because we believe in the industry so much, we have volunteered all these years, and we're just simply carrying on the torch, legacy of WPPI, which we carried ourselves. But now the cool thing is that we have complete autonomy, and if we
Right.
could make things better and make change, which we're constantly open to hearing this stuff, we will do it. We want to
I,
celebrate you
I
guys.
think
So yeah,
it's at least from my perspective, it's super obvious the fact that it's what you're doing is for the community because you don't have to be doing this, right? WPPI got rid of their awards. They had their reasons, and you did not have to step up and create your own, right? And you didn't
no.
have to migrate the WPPI awards into Icon, right? Like you didn't have to migrate the credits and
Oh,
all that. So
that was painful, by the way,
I'm
but we
sure
did
it
it.
was. I'm sure it was. But you chose to do it, and it's obvious that you chose to do it for the community, not for yourself. So I am as somebody who has never entered the print competition before, as I said way when we first started this, I appreciate you doing it for the community overall. So thank you for
Well,
doing it.
I am gonna make a I'm gonna make I would love to see more people enter. Like I said, I'm only upset that I can't enter. So because for me, like I said, this was my benchmark, and WPBI was my
Mhm.
benchmark every year. I'm just upset that I can't enter myself. But
Mhm.
at this stage in my career, my job is to lift others. Whether I'm
Yeah.
photographing you, whether I'm teaching you, whether we're holding the awards, my job is and Melissa's job is to bring out the best in people, and ultimately, as directors of the competition, is to put everyone on a fair and level playing field, and the cream will always rise to the top. So,
Mhm.
if you've got any thoughts or questions, just jump on the website. On the bottom right, there's a little chat. We answer. Melissa answers very quickly, and we help you as well. And jump on that Facebook group page, by the way. So if you go to the link that's right in front of you there on the iconawards.com website, click on Facebook, add yourself to the group, and there's constant discussions. And I'm sure we'll probably go live in the next couple of days. So just a bit of a final encouragement to you guys as well. So, but yeah, thank you for the opportunity, guys, and your support for the awards. It means a lot to us and the community. Our community wants to see that the companies that they use that serve them also support the competition. And if we didn't have companies like you supporting it, we could not hold it in the manner that we're holding it. So the cool thing is that if you can't get to WPPI, the judging will be broadcast live for the first time in history. The awards night will be broadcast live. And not only that, during the trade show, if you're physically at WPPI, we are going to grab images that scored a 79 or under from different genres with teachable moments, and we are going to be critiquing them all day long for those 3 days. and that will also be broadcast live. So you're going to have 5 days free of the best education you'll ever find, of people from all over the world sharing their expertise, and we can't wait to bring that to you. So we're excited about that. So thank you for the opportunity of
Amazing.
sharing.
Amazing. Oh, so exciting. I can't wait for WPPI this year.
Should be good,
um,
man. We're excited.
yeah. If you have enjoyed this live stream with Jared Ghionis and you want to know when the next live stream is, and just know you are invited to be part of the bigger conversation. Join the Imagen community today. If you're not already there, just go to imaginai.com/community. You'll see how to get over to our Facebook group from there. By joining the community, you get access to exclusive conversations, live events like this, Q&As, and so much more. We hope to see you there. Once more, imaginai.com/community. Just scan that code that's up on the screen. And yeah, that's it. From there, we're going to call it. Thank you so much, Jerry.